This is Misfortune Radio with New York Times best-selling author and your host, Doug Andrews.
As I've been listening to the news this last week, Obama went to Europe. He was in London, and I was just amused because the media said he's trying to fix the global recession and fix the economy. Well, I snickered at that. Let me give you my take here. Back in the 16th century, when the printing press was invented and all of a sudden people, the general populace could own their own Bible, for example, they had the ability to be able to go directly to the home office, so to speak, instead of going through the middleman in order to get the scripture. And what ended up happening was a religious reformation that was actually even more an economic reformation, because before separation of church and state, you had really the main church, which was over the government, dictating how many days. In fact, back then there were 120 holy days that people couldn't work. Merchants had to compensate their employees and so forth. And so, that was really as much of an economic revolution or reformation than even a religious one. Well, do you know what I think's happening today? I was having a conversation with my good friend Dan Sullivan, and during the last 40 or 50 years, I really think what's happening is we have turned into a global society, a global economy, and because of the internet, we are able to communicate with all kinds of people all over the world, to do business with other people, and that's why even communistic countries like North Korea struggle, because they cannot keep their people in the dark any longer, and they go through all kinds of gyrations and blackmail us to help them out, or else they threaten to make nuclear weapons and so forth, because they can't afford to have their population really understand free enterprise and capitalism. But what I think's happening is during the last 3, 4, 5 decades, we've become more of a global economy. And I'm afraid what Obama and Congress is doing is they're trying to retrogress instead of progress. They're trying to get back to where they can totally control the economy. And believe me, I've always really believed in laissez-faire. That's a French term for just leave it alone. The more government meddles in trying to regulate and control the economy, such as GM, this week we heard that GM will probably file bankruptcy, and this is after already receiving billions of dollars, and they're part of the $1 trillion bailout. And here we are, they're looking at maybe a Chapter 11 reorganization bankruptcy, which I understand if nobody's there to ante up and help them in this reorganization, the government is obligated to continue to help them. Maybe the only good thing that comes out of a Chapter 11 bankruptcy is they would get rid of all these obligations they have to the unions and so forth, because the fact of the matter is, a lot of the car companies and foreign car manufacturers that have located their plants in states in the United States that do not have union labor laws and so forth, those are the ones who are still thriving. They're able to be profitable. And it's about time maybe we let failures just be failures, and instead of trying to reorganize and resurrect and delay the inevitable, maybe it's time GM sold their equipment, liquidated, and started over again. I'm a red-blooded American. Back in 1990, I had it after 3 Cadillacs and spending about $40,000 for a car, and 3 years later, it's only worth $12,000. I finally, out of an economic decision, a logical decision, I had to buy my first, foreign car, which was an Infiniti. Lexus and Infiniti came out in 1990, and that Japanese company, because when I was a kid, anything made in Japan was cheap or junk, and Dr. Edwards Deming, who really tried to talk to the big 3 auto manufacturers and tell them they had to, shape up a little bit their quality. And back then he was rejected and said, nobody's going to ever buy a car from the big 3 if they want quality. Well, quality went downhill. In 1990, I finally bought an Infiniti because they guaranteed if I spent $38,000 on that, 3 years later, at the end of the 3rd year, they guaranteed it would be worth $38,000. From an economic standpoint, I had to make a choice. And so I think Americans have been doing that. This problem didn't start last year or 2 years ago. This problem started, 10, 15, 20 years ago when the big 3 stopped putting out the quality. And now they expect us just to turn around and start buying American again until when they haven't proven themselves yet. In other words, if we were to allocate that $1 trillion in the bailout, just let's say in 6 months of not withholding taxes out of the average American's paycheck, that would probably do more to stimulate the economy. Or if that $1 trillion was put back into the middle, businessman's pocket, this economy would probably turn around within a year. I guarantee you the average American taxpayer, if they got that tax money back, they would not be going out there buying GM stock right now, because I don't think GM's going to even be able to honor the warranties that they have on there. And when you have that, it's just a spiral downward. So
this is Missed Fortune Radio with Doug Andrew.